Welcome back to the Coding Fanatic YouTube channel. This is your host, Richard Clark, and I am an Android developer who learns by spotting key information, and I'm here to teach you to do the same. Whether that applies to learning new skills, navigating the workplace, or just working on projects and seeing them through to completion, I'm that guy. So if that sounds like content that you're interested in, then don't forget to hit like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you see when I upload new videos like this. Also, head to codingfanatic.com, join the mailing list, and you'll be the first to know when I have new articles and videos around these topics and more. So that being said, let's start the video. So picking up where I left off last time, I set up the real-time database for that list of names application. So I went into the Firebase console and I configured a real-time database. Now that's set up in my project and everything is good to go. The next thing I did was I experimented with learning to write to the database. So the first thing I did was I went through the documentation and found the code that I needed so that I could actually practice writing data from my app into my real-time database on the back end. Now for the code itself, the first thing I did was I imported two classes. The first being the database reference class and the second being the Firebase database class. In the onCreate method, I instantiated a new Firebase database object that would link to the database that is paired with this app, and I also instantiated the database reference object so that I could create a reference that allows me to update or write data to the backend real-time database. Now that Firebase database object was used to reference the Firebase database or the real-time database, and then the database reference was used to actually add a name and value for the information being added into the real-time database. So in this instance, I added a reference, or I added something with the name message, a string with the name message. That was the name of the information, and the value held, I made this myself with a smiley face. So using these two objects, I was able to add entries into the real-time database. Now, according to the Firebase documentation, I shouldn't have read and write permissions available for this database because anyone who has access to it can then manipulate the data. But honestly, I really don't care. This is just to get my feet wet, so not a big deal. Not a best practice, but also not a big deal. Not this time, anyway. As long as I'm learning, that's what matters. So now I have a pretty solid grasp on actually writing the data into the database. So the next step will be to learn how to read the information from the database into the app. So that's for next time though. And then once I have that down, then we can see about reading the list of names from the database into an application and displaying it in a list view. So that's the plan for my next few steps. Before I end this video, I want to take a second to talk about the difference between using tutorials and using the documentation and my thoughts on the whole thing. So I typically, because I'm focused on efficiency and learning as quickly as possible, I always try to find a tutorial someone else has made. My experience with, if you have written Android apps and you've been on Google's website where they give you the documentation for everything, you know doggone well that is not the best way to just learn how to create Android apps. A lot of it is just walls of text and snippets of code, and honestly, that's not the best way for me. That's not how I learn. I like to see someone do something and then repeat it. So for me, if you're gonna write it down, at least write it down step by step. But typically, the Android API online, they don't have all that. It's not documented that way. That's why I look at video tutorials. So for this step, I chose to look into video tutorials because I wanted to see how someone else did it. And I figured I could just take light notes and then do it myself. That did not work so well, okay? A lot of these tutorials I found, people were so rushed and so scattered, like they were in a hurry to get the video out. I mean, honestly, it's like somebody had a gun to their head while they were recording it. And it's like, man, that's not useful for teaching, okay? they'll be talking about how to do something, and then halfway through it, start talking about start going on a whole other tangent on another project or some other thing they did, or say, oh, don't forget that, you have to copy and paste this, make sure your app has this too, because some people complained last time about this, and just make sure it has it. And then this is important for Android because it does this thing and it does that thing. And it's like, for someone who's new and doesn't know what they're doing, that information it's not pertinent, and it can be really confusing when you're trying to figure things out for the first time. So stop it. People who do that in your tutorials, don't do that. Now, you all remember when I did my tutorials on how to add activities to an Android app, right? Now, and if you don't, then you can click over here and you'll see the full list of how to add activities into your Android apps. It was a 4-part series, but the first 3 parts was me walking you through step by step how to do each thing. How to create the new class, how to update your Android manifest, how to set parent activities, and then how to use listeners to actually start the activity so that the person using your app can actually physically do it. And then the last part of that series is where I talk about the activity stack and how activities go on top of each other and things like that. That to me is a more concise and useful method of teaching, because let's say you have a junior developer who is just starting out and they want to learn how to add an activity real quick. It accomplishes this. And if you want to know more about it, then at the end, then you can start to look at the mechanics and the underlying things that make this work. What are your thoughts on this? What do you guys think about the state of tutorials out there on the internet? Surely most of you have used tutorials or some online guides by now. What are your thoughts on the state of technical writing in 2020? Do you guys think that people should be a bit more concise, or what are some ways they can improve? And additionally, what are some ways that I can improve? If you have been following me for a while, then let me know in the comments below. What do you want to see more of, and how would you suggest I improve my teaching methods for all of you? That's about it. Those are my thoughts on it. It's just if you're going to make tutorials, you're going to do any type of technical writing, make sure that you're organized ahead of time and you're concise in your directions. And then when you want to go into theory, you can do that separate. But when you're teaching, just focus on what needs to be done and make it as clear and concise as possible, which is the goal of Coding Fanatic. This is what I do. I learn things by focusing on key information, and then I teach you, the viewer or reader, to do the exact same thing, so that you can expedite your learning and make time to actually go from the learning phase to the action phase. And you can always go back and forth, but it's 2 different things. You can't learn and do it at the exact same time. You can learn things and reflect back on it after it's done, but for the time being, it's just about, just get this done. And then later on, you can look back and say, okay, here are the little things that I learned, or here are the ways I can improve on my process or optimize it later on. So that's how I look at it. Anywho, once again, this is your host, Richard Clark, signing out. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can see updates like these, videos like this each week. And head on over to codingfanatic.com and join the mailing list, so you'll be the first to know when I write articles surrounding my projects, Android tutorials, and also advice on career stuff and dealing with the workplace. So once again, this is your host, Richard Clark, signing out, and I'll see you all on the next one. Peace.